Today, we're going to unpack something huge, a massive, sudden government intervention into the housing market. We're talking about a move that sent absolute shockwaves through the financial world, all with just the stroke of a pen.
I mean, just think about that for a second. What if that was possible? No long, drawn-out debates in Congress, no waiting around for the Federal Reserve to make a move, just a direct order aimed squarely at making it cheaper to buy a home. It almost sounds like something you'd see in a movie, right?
Well, it's not a movie. With a single executive order, the entire housing market was turned on its head. So today, we're going to break down exactly how it all went down, who the big winners and losers are, and what kind of high-stakes gamble this really is for the whole economy.
So, you're probably asking, why? Why do something so drastic in the first place? Well, it all starts with a huge problem the country's been facing, what some are calling the housing affordability wall.
For months, this has been the world that anyone trying to buy a house has been living in. That number, 6.16%, it's more than just a rate. It's a wall. When you combine that with sky-high home prices, it's basically slammed the door on the dream of owning a home for millions of people.
And this didn't just sideline potential buyers, it was putting the brakes on the entire housing market. And that creates a drag on the economy. And of course, a massive political headache in Washington that just couldn't be ignored anymore.
And the response? Well, it was dramatic. Instead of going through all the usual channels, the administration went for a direct surgical strike, a move that's now being called the $200 billion bypass. Now, to even understand how this is possible, you gotta know about these two giants, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Just think of them as the engine room of the entire U.S. mortgage market. But here is the absolute key to this whole story. Ever since the 2008 crisis, the government has basically held the keys to that engine room, and that control is what made this whole thing possible.
Okay, so here's the playbook for what some are calling a people's QE. It's pretty straightforward. The government tells Fannie and Freddie, take that massive $200 billion pile of cash you're sitting on and start buying up mortgage-backed securities. Now, when a buyer that huge enters the market, the price of those securities, it goes up. And here's the cool part. In the world of bonds, when the price goes up, the payout or the yield goes down. And since the mortgage rates that you and I get are tied directly to those yields, boom, the rates drop. It's like a direct cash injection right into the heart of the housing market. And the goal here was really specific. This whole $200 billion operation was designed to slash mortgage rates by 1/4 to 0.5 percentage point, pretty much overnight. And for a family buying a home, that's not just a number on a screen. That can be hundreds of dollars in real savings every single month. So, what happens when you announce you're about to pump $200 billion into a market? Well, Wall Street's reaction was immediate and, frankly, explosive. It created what people are now calling a green wave all across the financial markets. The very next day, on January 9th, investors just piled into anything and everything that had to do with housing. I mean, the logic was super simple. Lower rates mean more people will get loans, more people will refinance. It's a boom time for the whole industry. And just look at the reaction for the non-bank mortgage lenders. We're talking about companies whose entire business model is just writing home loans. Investors saw them as the #1 beneficiaries, and the market just went bananas. I mean, look at this chart. Loan Depot rockets up an incredible 24% in one day. And you see huge jumps for companies like UWM and Rocket too. But here's the thing. This green wave didn't lift every boat. And this table, it really shows the tale of two very different markets. On one side, you have the lenders. They are thrilled. Their outlook is bullish because they're about to make a whole lot of new loans. But on the other side, you've got these companies called Agency M REITs. And these are basically firms that own existing mortgage debt. For them, this policy is terrible news. It shrinks the profit they make, which is why their outlook is completely bearish. And that brings us to the final and maybe the most crucial part of this whole story, because behind all the market excitement and the promise of lower mortgage payments lies a very, very high-stakes gamble with some potentially serious long-term consequences. A lot of critics are asking a really fundamental question. Is this policy even solving the right problem? As Brian Jacobson points out in this quote, what the government is doing is juicing demand by making mortgages cheaper. But it does absolutely nothing about the real root of the problem, which is a massive shortage of housing supply. And, basic economics tells you that when you increase demand for something without increasing the supply, the price just goes up.
Okay, now to understand the biggest risk of all, we have to look at this number. After the 2008 crash, a new rule was put in place. Fannie and Freddie had to build up a massive capital buffer.
Basically, a $328 billion rainy day fund. The entire purpose of this fund was to make sure that taxpayers would never, ever have to bail them out again. It was the Never Again Fund.
And this is the gamble. That Never Again Fund, the executive order takes $200 billion of it, the vast majority of that safety net, and uses it to stimulate the market. This massively increases the risk that if there's another housing downturn, you guessed it, taxpayers are going to be right back on the hook. So what you end up with is this complicated chain reaction of risk. For one, you're creating totally artificial prices in the bond market, so nobody really knows what anything is worth. You also create what's called a policy cliff. I mean, what happens when the $200 billion runs out and that support just vanishes overnight? On top of that, all of this makes it way harder to ever return Fannie and Freddie to the private sector, all while potentially just pouring gasoline on the fire of housing inflation.
So at the end of the day, that's the central question we're left with. Was this a brilliant, necessary move to give homebuyers some relief in juicy economy? Or is it a short-term sugar high that's just torn down our defenses and set the stage for a much bigger crisis down the road? I guess only time will tell.